Hello and welcome to this video tutorial. Today we're looking at preparing patterns not only for uploading to a site like Spoonflower, but also for sale as microstock. I'm going to start with a brand new document. It really doesn't matter how big your document is, but I'm going to use a 1920 by 1080 size document just because that's the size that I usually work at. I'm going to use one of Illustrator's built-in patterns, but what you would do is use your own pattern. So I'm just opening up the swatches panel, and here are the swatches, and this is the one I'm going to use. Now, the process is as simple as dragging your swatch out of the swatches panel into your document, and you're going to do that regardless of what pattern swatch you're dealing with. They're going to all be treated exactly the same way. Now I'm going to the layers palette. You can get to yours of course by choosing window and then layers. At the very bottom of the layers palette is going to be a no fill no stroke rectangle. So if I open up the group here, you'll see there's lots and lots of groups, and down here is a path, and it is a no fill no stroke rectangle. It has to be there. Every single pattern has one. What we're going to do is we're going to drag it out of the bottom here, and we're going to put it above the group that contains the pattern. Nothing has visibly changed on the screen. We're going to select absolutely everything. I'm just dragging over everything. I'm going to use this as a clipping path. So I'm just going to right click my document and choose Make Clipping Mask. What that does is it reduces the visible part of the pattern to what is in actual fact the pattern swatch. Now this is really small. I'm just going to zoom in here because the pattern swatch itself is quite small. I'm going to select it because I want to see how big it is. So I'm going to Window and then Transform because I want my values for my artwork visible here. And you'll see that these are uneven values. The numbers are fractional, and we don't want that to be the case. So what I'm going to do is link these two values together, and I'm going to change the width and height. I'm also going to increase the size of it. This is vector art. It doesn't matter. It's going to scale to infinitely large sizes. So I'm going to start by making it quite a bit bigger. It's 108 right now. I'm going to make it 500 in terms of its width. Now its height has also changed appropriately. The problem is that this is still a fractional amount here on the height. Now that is a big concern for saving these patterns. It's going to risk you ending up with an extra pixel in your design. So what I'm going to do is unlock this. So now I can change the height but without affecting the width, and all I'm going to do is knock anything off the end of this that is the fractional part. So it's 506 and a little bit, so I'm just going to make it 506 even. What that's done is to slightly shrink the pattern by a fractional portion of an inch. You're just not going to see that difference, but it's going to be critical in terms of making sure that this thing actually works. I'm going to select everything again. I'm just using Control or Command A, but you can click on it to select it. The other thing I'm going to do is put this top corner at 0, 0. So you can see I've clicked here at the reference point, and I'm going to set it to 0, 0, which is going to shoot this piece of art into the very top corner of the document. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make my artboard the same size. Now you don't technically need to do this, I just find it a lot neater than having a very small pattern in a very large artboard. So I've selected this again. I'm going to the artboard tool. I'll double click on it. Go up here to the top of the presets because we can choose to have the artboard sized to the selected art or the artwork bounds. In this case it's the same thing. So I'm just making sure the width and height are 500 and 506, which is exactly the same size as my pattern piece was. I'm also making sure that the top corner of this artboard is at 0 and 0. Again, if you have fractional amounts for the positioning of your artboard, you can get into difficulty when you export your swatches. So you just don't want anything to go wrong. That is quite simple to fix. So make sure that this is 0, 0 for the top corner. Click OK. I'm going back to the selection tool. So now I have an artboard that is exactly the same size as my pattern element. My pattern element is perfect now for preparing to be exported. Now you can do this one of two ways. I'm going to choose File and then Export, and I'm going to use Save Aware Legacy. One of the reasons why I like this is that although you can't specify the resolution of the output, it's going to be 96 dpi, like it or lump it, that's what it's going to be. You can adjust the size. So I'm going to save this out as a JPEG. It's a high quality. I'm going to increase the quality all the way up. Here is the width and height of this, and if I want to make it bigger, I can do so. So instead of 500, I'm actually going to make it 1500. Because this is locked, you'll see that the height is adjusted exactly the same way. So we now have a much larger pattern piece. That's really good for Spoonflower because it means we can use our pattern at quite a large size on Spoonflower should we wish to do so. So I'll click Save. I've already saved some of these patterns, so I'm going to call this Helen 1 and I'll click Save. So that's now saved as a JPEG as Helen 1. There's another way of exporting these patterns. We'll go to File and then Export and choose Export As. In this case, I'm going to call it Helen 2. I'll click Export. In this case, we can specify the resolution. Just be aware that the resolution is going to be this dimension here divided by 72 and then multiplied by 300. I have a video which I'll link to in the description below to explain why that happens, but take your horizontal and your vertical measurement, divide them by 72 and then multiply them by 300, and that will give you the dimensions in terms of pixels for the width and height of the final design. I'm going to click here on OK. So now I have both of these patterns saved. So let's go to the folder where they've been saved to. So here's Helen 2, that's the second one that we just saved. It's 2084 by 2109. This is Helen 1. This is actually the size that we preset and we knew exactly what it was going to be. 1500 by 1518. This is going to be 96 dpi. This one's going to be 300 dpi. Refer to the video in the description if that's confusing to you. Now at this point I suggest that you test these, and you can test it in a program such as Photoshop. What you'll do is you'll go to Photoshop and open your files. I'm opening both of mine. Because of the dimensions of these, I'm not expecting anything to be wrong with them, but this is what you're going to do. You're going to the top corner of this document and you're going to check this area where it's going to be really obvious if you've got a partially transparent pixel. And then you're going to check all of your corners. Because if there's a problem, it's going to show up along this line here or this line here. And again, it's going to show up across the bottom of the document. But because of the dimensions that I saw that those images have been saved at, I'm pretty sure that they're going to be okay. If they are, then you should be ready to go and upload them to a site like Spoonflower. Again, I'm just checking. This is actually a transparent ping. So we've got transparency here, but again, this is what I'm looking for. Well, here's our problem. The ping version has not saved correctly. You can see that I've got a pixel down the edge here, which is lighter. So you cannot send that to Spoonflower or anywhere else because it's going to look really, really bad. Let's just check the bottom and see how that's looking. Okay, the bottom's out as well. So one of the things that you can do is you can go to this tool, which is the single row marquee tool. You can click in the bottommost row of this document. You could choose select inverse and then choose image crop, and that's going to get that pixel out of the document. You can come across here to this side, go back this time to the single column marquee tool. I'm just going to deselect my current selection. I'll click just here in this column. I'll choose select inverse so that instead of this column selected, we've got the whole document selected except this column. Image crop. And so that's got rid of the problem areas in this design. I would go ahead then and resave it. Choose File and then Save. I would go back and open it from start. So I'll close it. I'll go back, File and Open. I'm going to reopen this ping version. And I'm again going to double check those edges because if there's a problem, you need to know it. because otherwise you're going to be selling something that is an incomplete pattern. Now this edge is looking fine, and the other edge that we need to check is the bottom edge. Again, it's looking fine. So unless you can assure yourself that you're saving without any issues, you will need to check these designs. Now, the other thing that I'm going to do with this particular pattern, since it did have issues, is to check it also another way. Going to the layers palette, I'm just going to add a new layer underneath, and I'm going to fill it with white, just simply because it's going to be a bit easier for me to see what's going on here. I'm going to select everything with select all. I'm going to edit and define pattern. I'm going to call this Helen 2. So I've now created this as a pattern. I'm going back into Photoshop. I'm going to create a much larger document. This is 5,000 by 5,000 pixels. The last one was 2083 by 2108. So effectively 4 copies of this document are going to fit into this one, 4 and a bit. I'll go to Layer, New Fill Layer, Pattern. I'll click OK, and I'm going to select my pattern, the one I just created, which is going to be the last one in this dialog, and fill the document with that. Now again, I'm going to zoom in to make sure that this pattern does not have any breaks in it. Remember, we just took out a whole pixel out of this document, and so we want to make sure that there are no obvious signs that a pixel has been removed from the height or from the width of the document. Now I'm not seeing anything here. You should expect to see any difficulties out of a 5,000 pixel document. The difficulties would be around this mark, because that's where the pattern starts to repeat, and I'm not seeing that at all. There's no obvious lines through the pattern. And believe me, even 1 pixel, the chances are you're going to see that really obviously. So it does look like the newer version, the fixed up version of this pattern is just fine. But if you're selling these things, you are going to have to sort out any issues with them, and you want to be aware of those and fix them before you upload your patterns, and not have customers come back and say, hey, look, there's something wrong with your pattern. So this is a JPEG image that we could upload to Spoonflower. It's also a JPEG image that you could sell, for example, on a microstock website as a pattern piece. Of course, this one's designed by Adobe, but the exact same process is going to be applicable for patterns of your own. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope that you've learned things about saving patterns out of Illustrator and the need to check them because of some really bad habits that Illustrator has. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell, and you'll be alerted when new videos are released. Until next time, my name's Helen Bradley. Thank you so much for joining me here on my YouTube channel.